What is up? Good Friday morning.
Evening
to you all out there, and welcome into another episode of the Barking Brown Show. I'm Jacob, Mr. Casey Kinnaman, and Nick Carnes down below. We're brought to you as always by our friends over at SeatGeek. Listen, you know the drill. Get your go over to SeatGeek, get your tickets for the remaining whatever game you're going to go to. Put our promo code Barking Browns in there, get $20 off your first purchase. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure you go to the YouTube, youtube.com/@thebarkingbrowns. Hit that sub button. Hit that bell, give us a thumbs up. We would appreciate it. Gentlemen, how are we?
Doing good, man. So happy to be turning this page. And I've been on the Jacksonville literally since Tuesday morning. And so I got all the blinders on and focused on this game and this game only right now.
I'm trying to talk myself into bouncing back in Jacksonville. I'm still hurting, Casey. I'm still hurting.
I get it. I get it.
You know, it might have something to do with 10% of the roster being on IR after week one. That's a thing.
We're back, baby.
But we're gonna figure it out. I can't believe we're here again, but we're gonna figure it out. And we got somebody special tonight to help us do that.
All right, Jacob. You doing all right?
Yeah.
All right. Look.
Sorry,
It's all good. It's all good. So this will be the 20th meeting between these two teams. Jacksonville's actually ahead in the series 12-7. The Browns have won 2 straight, including their last matchup, 30-27 in Cleveland last season. And it's actually been more even in later years because they're up 12-7 in the series, but they won the first 6 times we played this team. This game is in Jacksonville. The Browns are 4-5 in Jacksonville. So it's been some tough sledding, you know. But why listen to me talk about this team when we have a professional that can do it for me? All right, this is a friend of the show, and he covers the Jaguars for Fans First Sports. And he has so many other jobs. I'm not going to get into them. I'm going to let him do that. So prepare yourselves for the bing, because the bing is coming. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Mr. Kyle Nash.
Honor, joy, and privilege to jump in, gentlemen. Listen, I have my normal bell, or my new bell, I should say. But per Casey's request, I'm going to stick to voice acting the bing. You know, there's just certain things that people require, and as the architect of the bing, according to Drew Willingham of the In and Out Sports Debate Show on Sartoba Media, I'm going to stick to that title and do that thing. But gentlemen, honor, joy, and privilege to come in and listen. I'll say this: I wish it was under better circumstances. I listened to your instant reaction last week, and I heard you say SeatGeek as the sponsor, Jacob. I was this ready for it to be better help for all the help you guys need in that instant reaction. Good gravy.
We should reach out. We should reach out. I think that would be that'd be an apropos sponsor.
I wish that was the first time somebody has suggested that, but that's not the first time I've heard that reference. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever.
I'm not even going to ask for 5% if you land it now because you're inspired at this point. I'll put it that way.
I totally understand it.
All right, let's get into it. So I've literally been studying you guys all week, and the first thing I got to say is, how impressed are you with Brian Thomas Jr.? After what I saw, he went right at Jalen Ramsey, and it was drawing with him, drawing PIs, snagging back of the end zone touchdowns. You know, all 4 of his targets down. What's your first impressions of seeing this man during live bullets?
I mean, he's a man possessed, right? He can only run 2 routes, right, Casey? He's completely useless. This is the makings of what a number 1 receiver looks like. Maybe he's not there right now today, but when your first major move, you mentioned it, Casey, when your first big play was to draw a PI on Patrick Ramsey, how very beautiful. And listen, I know the Duval Devout loved it, every minute of it, to get that bit of action, especially after opening a game with another Jaguar getting a sack, or former Jaguar getting a sack for the first time he faced him since that was Calais Campbell, for those who didn't keep. You're 17. Who'd have thunk it, right? But
yeah.
BTJ is legit. You know, I had said he would be the guy that I think the Jags really mean to use to actually replace the role of Calvin Ridley. And I know people got confused because Gabe Davis came out wearing 0 and he's a tall guy and yada, yada, yada. Game 1 was so beautiful, not just to see a good football player develop and defy the critics, but my ego being stroked for how correct I was on calling TJ and what he could do.
I know the game didn't end up in a Jaguars victory, but I saw that the clips of where Trevor Lawrence starts from throwing the ball and where BTJ is when he actually releases it and where it ends up. It had to be pretty nice to see Trevor healthy and looking a little better over there, huh?
Oh, 100%. And this is what the Duval Devout was looking for from moment one, Nick. I mean, through the early part of camp, I don't know if you guys saw the short that I commented on earlier in camp after BTJ stopped, air quotes, struggling on the Duval Dive YouTube channel. Bing! But I was gloating something stupid because at the beginning of training camp, there was concerns about the rookie after looking good in mini camp, not developing right. They left out the part where everything was red zone. They opened up the field. He looked good in camp. What was his first catch, though, for a point as a Jacksonville Jaguar? In the damn red zone. This is why they have the camps, gentlemen. This guy is doing everything all over the route tree for the Jags, and that's what you love the most. And then you mentioned Trevor specifically. My favorite play from him, though we did have some mighty nice throws and such, did have some unfortunate drops from Christian Kirk. That was uncharacteristic. But my favorite thing was when he had nothing, he broke the pocket, ran for the first down, got a nice block from Evan Ingram down the field. And that really was the proof in the pudding that he was healthy as the Jags need him to be at this point.
I forgot.
There's a lot of details, man. I'm mad at you.
Well, here we go. So I wrote an article this week about your wide receiver core. And tell me if I'm off base on this.
Okay.
So when we talk about wide receiver rooms, we always say we want it built like a basketball team. You want, and when I look at yours, I see it perfectly laid out. Now there's some young developing pieces, there's some veteran pieces, but I see the point guard as the player who play the least, probably Parker Washington. Mm-hmm. I see him as an eventual heir apparent to Christian Kirk, who I view right now as the shooting guard. And then I have BTJ as your small forward. He's a slasher, does everything. Power forward, Gabe Davis, and then I give your center to Evan Ingram, which I know is listed as a tight end, but I watched the tape. That man's not putting his hand in the dirt. He's one of the better power slots in the NFL. So I just look at it at a complete tight end, a complete wide receiver room that presents a lot of problems. And when I look at through the Browns lens, like I think the Browns have the DBs to match up, but we don't travel. We stay certain sides of the field. So I think Martin Emerson's a perfect matchup for a Gabe Davis, but because the Jags will line the receivers up everywhere. My favorite thing to watch was you guys would come out in four wide with Kirk and Ingram in the slots, and then you guys have guys on the outside, and then you would motion ETN out if it was man coverage and kind of open up the middle of the field. And Lawrence operates beautifully in that. Like you can tell how he likes to see the field. And at that point, the only weak thing
he only hits the first read, Casey. What do you mean sees the field? Sorry.
No, trust me, man. When you hear the overall narrative from national people and even loud voices within your own, Twitterverse, you start to become jaded for certain things. But what I see is the only limiting factor because I think the wide receiver is the strength of your team, of the offense. Or the pass catchers, I'll say, because I'll include Ingram, and I know people say he's a tight end. I see what I see. I think the limiting factor is the offensive line. I think if you give Lawrence time, man, he'll dice you up. I mean, he's one of the better deep throwers in the NFL. Am I on base with that or not?
Hey, man, listen, you talk about writing articles about facts like that. I've been saying that very thing even before I transitioned to Fans First and was still doing Jaguars on SI. Yeah, I mean, all that is completely on base to me. I'll nitpick and say that I'd call Christian Kirk the point guard over Parker Washington, but okay, fine. That's cool. But I like the basketball team analogy of the different size, different tool sets. NTN, you mentioned him. Ingram, you mentioned him. You're doing all that. You're doing it right. You mentioned the offensive line. The only thing I'd correct is I like the tackles pretty well when Cam Robinson could stay healthy. And Anton Harrison, though he didn't have a great game against the Dolphins, is a bad mamma jamma. That interior offensive line was just not great, and this is what was scary going into last year's game with the Browns and you guys having home field and being hot like you were with Joe Flacco. I'm like, listen, if he gets time, he can tear a group apart. I've seen it happen. Granted, I'm still asking questions about, Jimmy Smith and Michael Crabtree in the end zone. But again, that, whatever, that's old news.
Yeah.
The Hardball Bowl was still a great Super Bowl. I don't care. But with all that in mind, guys, this is the exact thing. And you mentioned, you talk about having the DBs to keep up. Let's pretend I didn't think y'all's DBs were good, which I absolutely think they do. it all starts with the pressure that's coming from the middle, man.
Mm-hmm.
Myles Garrett, the D tackles. And listen, I know Quentin Jefferson may not be a starter per se, but he's a guy who I think is a big part of the rotation there. He's going to be a big part of run stopping, big part of sucking up blocks and making guys like Myles Garrett move in space, whether they're going to come in and stop the run or try to sack Trevor or just cause havoc. This is going to be a sloppy football game because the weakness of the offensive line of the Jags leans right into your strength. This is a matchup problem from that particular piece. Fortunately, IR is going to hand its own share of matchup problems on the Browns side as well when we're talking about the Jags defense.
Yeah, and you talk about the interior. So the Browns are having some issues now at depth at defensive tackle. They you lose Michael Hall Jr. with the off the field situation. He's still on the exempt list. Maurice Hurst goes to IR. Not that Maurice Hurst plays much run defense, but I'm really interested in Dallas was not a team that going into last week you thought there was going to be a lot of issues with them running the football, pounding the rock, being able to move the ball, because that was just didn't seem to be how their roster was built. But that is a glaring hole for the Browns' interior defense is run defense, because most of those guys are, pass rushers. They just are.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that Dallas ended up having a much better day because I think that weakness kind of stuck out. So my biggest question for you, I know, the back and forth between Etienne and Bigsby and trying to figure out who's going to be the number one there. How do you feel about that? I mean, I think that Tank Bigsby is the better pure runner in my opinion, but how confident or where do you sit on the Jags run game?
I mean, listen, pardon me for pumping the brakes and not selling out on a guy that's 1,000-yard rusher the past 2 years and receives the ball like a beast. And it's not like I'm dissing Tank Bigsby's week 1 performance. The most important thing he did, guys, hold on to the damn ball. Okay, how about that? How about we leave with that, fellas? Okay.
Little visions of Ernest Biner there going into the end zone for Etienne.
Oh,
yeah, and Etienne hasn't had a fumble like that going back for 2 years. That lost the game against the Giants at Everbank. That could be part of why Brian Daboll allegedly was the coach of the year in 22. So
isn't it Trevor Bank this week? Am I off base?
No,
correctly?
Paying attention and doing their research. That's right. It's Trevor Bank. The debut with Trevor Bank is what we're actually titling the Instant Reaction Show. If you go to that on the Duval Dive YouTube channel after the game, by the way. So there's that. Oh wait, sorry. Bing! I beg your pardon. Just so you guys know what the other bell sounds like. I had to do it.
There we go. Yeah, we're up to speed.
They're both great effects.
Thanks, Nick. No, but listen, all that aside, you make good points about some of your interior missing, but I think the guys you do still have are enough of a threat to be a problem for the guards. It's going to be about how Mitch Morris holds up and helps with double teams. If one of your guys in the defensive tackle spot gets a one-on-one, immediately I'm worried.
Okay.
I know you referenced IR, and the Browns certainly have their share of problems, but it seems like Jacksonville has their own at the cornerback position. Could you elaborate on what's going on there, Kyle?
Yeah, it's a hamstring for Tyson Campbell. He's a guy that's kind of dealt with those in the past, and to see him being put on IR isn't exactly a surprise. As it worked out, we talked about the DB issues and injuries that happened during last year's game, and Tyson Campbell was one of those that were missing because they tried to rush him back. So the dude just got paid sick cash in the offseason. I actually got to write about that in training camp there back when I was still with Jaguars on SI. They don't get a bing. I'm not with them anymore. But with all that being said, the reason why I didn't bring him up in my keys to the game for Fans First Sports Network, bing, is because if things go according to plan, the IR decimated line and Nick Chubb missing is going to cause two. Oh, by the way, let's not forget Njoku. I almost did. Sorry, I need a whiteboard, guys. No offense, but damn it, we got a lot of offensive injuries. Okay, who am I telling, right? But if things go right, Tyson Campbell shouldn't be an issue. Okay, we have Trayvon Walker had 2 sacks last week. Eric Armstead had a sack in his Jags debut, and Josh Hines Allen, I dare you to stop him. Okay, that's talent. So I put the over/under at 3.5 turnovers for the Browns. If you get the under, you got a shot. I'm not sure you do, and there's no. maybe one particular reason why I think that'll happen. I'm trying not to bring that up without referencing your future ad campaign with BetterHelp. That's all there is to
All
it.
right. Well, you touched on it. So when I was looking at your defense, I believe Campbell was definitely your best cornerback. So now you got Ronald Darby. Tell me about Monteric Brown, the guy that's going to be stepping in for Tyson Campbell, because I am unfamiliar with his game.
Yeah, Buster Brown, as they call him. Monteric Brown is a big part of it too. Who's filled in, nicely as a backup when needed. He's had some excellent games filling in. I think you should be a bit more focused on the rookie Jarian Jones too, and his action, what he's going to do. I mean, hey, you thought BTJ had a great start getting the DPI from Jalen Ramsey. What about hey, it's your first third down in the NFL with a chance to make the team. The opposing offense get off the field. Cover Tyreek Hill right quick.
Yeah.
Hit it though. So, give the young man credit and listen, this is a guy, both Travis Holmes and Travis Holmes, my co-host on the Duval Dive, by the way, bing, identified early on as a guy who's going to get some snaps. Darby's going to get his time too, obviously. I think it's going to be the two of them for the most part. The part that I think that makes it stranger where Monteric Brown will get involved is Darnell Savage is limited in practice leading into this. I think honestly, as silly as it sounds, I think that's a bigger deal than Tyson Campbell being out, because this is the proof that the DB depth is already getting tested in the way it was like in week 7, week 9 last year. And that is not what Duval DeVout wanted to see.
Well, for people that put it in a Browns perspective, Savage is your Delpit. When I watched the game, he lived in the box just erasing tight ends. Mm-hmm. He didn't even record a tackle actually in the game, but he was everywhere and he was breaking up passes. And he was someone I looked at. He's like an energy multiplier. And with him being out, it'll be interesting to see, because obviously without Njoku, then he's going to your own Akins, which I believe would be a definite advantage for Savage. So we'll have to see how it plays, because we don't know how our tight ends are going to function in this offense without Njoku. Because our whole plan this year was for David Njoku not to get hurt. We didn't have too much behind him as far as a dual threat tight end. Akins can do some receiving stuff, but he's not a blocker.
Here's going to be the most fascinating thing about that in this game is they definitely will. They have 3 on the practice squad right now. Jeff Swain, the veteran, being probably the most likely to be called up. That or Cameron Latu. I'm not sure where they go. I don't think they will run any 2 tight end sets outside of goal line. I legitimately think, and they now have 7 wide receivers on the active roster, because right now David Njoku's still on the active roster. Akins is the only other one. Like, they're going to be really limited in that sense, because I think they're going to do a lot of 5 wideouts. I think there's going to be a lot of no tight end sets. Mm-hmm.
And it's frustrating too, because David Njoku was a big part of what really killed the Jaguars last year in our matchup. And so missing him, we talked about it on our show, Kyle, that we didn't understand the lack of addressing the tight end room. And because behind David Njoku, it's like no slight to Jordan Akins, but it's just there's no threat even remotely comparable to what Njoku brought. And I'm really concerned about what this does to the Browns offensively. And hearing you set the over-under on turnovers at 3.5 is downright terrifying.
It's accurate, though.
Fair, isn't it, though?
Hey, listen, and I'll say this, too, by the way. Jordan Akins, listen, he was actually one of my first guys I covered at UCF at the tight end position back for the black and gold banneret. Bing! I wasn't with the banneret at the time, but that's who I do my UCF coverage for now. They get the love. But punchline's this. I'm with you, man. I would not have trusted Jordan Akins at any point in his career to cover a defensive end. I mean, granted, anybody, even the receivers with Traquan Smith and a young Gabe Davis at that point, right? He wasn't even starting yet. I trust them to block down the field like Akins would. But yeah, if Akins is on the field and you see somebody trying to run, he better not be on Josh Hines Allen's side. Hell, he better not be on Trayvon Walker's. Who the hell is he actually going to block? That's what I'm asking.
Me?
Thank you. Thank you.
No, but all that being said, where Akins will come into play is I would have him challenge a Devin Lloyd perhaps in a pass coverage and win that one-on-one. I think he got there. Him and Chad Muma are guys that I don't think are bad, but if you're going to try to attack their linebacker core with a tight end, Akins is a guy I think that could do it. And it's from a pure check down perspective. And who knows, man, with the way the pressure's going, a check down of any sort, for Deshaun Watson is a big deal.
Hey, listen, Kyle, we might have Jack Conklin, who completely shredded his knee and has not played left tackle since his rookie season, starting at left tackle this week. So we've got that going for us.
The last time, I'm stealing this before Casey can say it.
I'm
I'm doing it, man. He said it in a podcast and then on an article for the OBR before he finished his OBR article that week. I completely stole this line and just threw it in my article because I was like, now if he tries to put it out there, our editors read mine first, and he'll be like, "What the hell, Casey? You stealing off of Jacob?" In reality,
we're taping this right now, right? Like this right here is just admission of guilt. What are you doing?
I've already admitted I did it. But the last time Jack Conklin played left tackle, Barack Obama was president.
I mean,
he is potentially going.
That's encouraging.
Josh Hines Allen.
I mean. As an offensive line, Conklin's a dude that can maul dudes. But, obviously knee injuries stop your ability to bend. And, hey, by the way, welcome back to the tackle position. Here's a franchise guy. May the force be with you. By the way, broke his franchise's record in sacks last year. Good luck, Humpy Bumpy. I'll put it this way. Having any sort of starter back is an improvement. Yes. I mean, we all know when it comes to the biggest problem with your offense, well, the answer is elementary, my dear Watson. But, to see the rest of the injuries you have in front of him are a big deal.
It's like, it's been such a weird year because before training camp, during OTAs, Jack Conklin announced that he was back, and yet we didn't see him. And then everybody was like, oh, Jed will be there. We haven't seen him. Well, he's been on the practice field this week. And then it was like, hey, Nyheim Hines, it's been over a year since you torn your ACL. We have no godly idea what's going on with him.
That's a good point. I haven't even thought about Nyheim Hines.
Well, Hines is on the pup with Chubb, so he has to miss 3 more games. So that is – but as soon as they they pretty much made us believe, we would see Hines in the preseason or the training camp. We haven't seen him. And so it's just you're going up against a team – I think Jacksonville's really hard to figure out on defense because I think they've got a little bit of everything, but I want to see it all together a little bit more. Yeah. And I think more so the issues last year, I think were, what was going on with Trevor Lawrence's health and those sorts of things. But the things that make Watson's life easier for the most part are gone.
Yeah.
And they're going up against this group.
Yeah. And by the way, we would be remiss to not mention Ryan Nielsen's, new defensive scheme in game 1, coming out for the first time with live, actual, real grown man football and giving up only 20 points to the most dynamic offense in the damn league. Okay. I know people are nitpicking. Well, you should have done the thing and cut this. And when this receiver went into this bullshit, it's 20 points to the Dolphins. Yeah. Stop it. Okay. Can we fix the O-line in the interior? Can Travis Etienne hold on to the ball to where no one's even talking about it?
Yeah. Well, so I did a matchup piece. So I think there's a lot of good on good in this game, and there's things that people aren't really talking about. Obviously, you're going to focus on Josh Hines Allen. You're going to focus on Trevon Walker. But for me, when I was watching Nielsen's usage of Eric Armstead, I watched series where he played 1-3 technique and edge in the same drive.
Right.
So I look at when it's obvious passing downs, which the Browns were stuck in against Dallas. We couldn't get success on first down. So you're constantly in obvious passing situations. Well, when that happens, they'll put Eric Armstead at tackle next to Trevon Walker or Josh Hines Allen. So one of my matchups was Eric Armstead versus Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller. How impressed were you with Eric Armstead's first action with the Jaguars?
Man, of course, I absolutely loved it. I mean, this is not me throwing Foley Fatukasi under the bus. As defensive tackles go, he may not be a big league name, but he was the guy when he was on the field and healthy, the Jags could stop the run. Even Derrick Henry would be stymied, right? The thing is that whole on the field and healthy combination, not exactly prolific in my dude's career. It's kind of like Cam Robinson on the defense. No disrespect to Cam Robinson as a tackle. I think is great. Dude can't stay on the field, and he was suspended 4 games last year too, right? So it's a whole thing there with injury issues. That being said, that's part of how they got Eric Armstead at such a discount was injury issues. No, I mean, obviously, I'm glad, that he's in there and doing what he was. And Casey, you mentioned the versatility of Eric Armstead. I remember being at the joint practices between them and the Bucks, and I'm writing my article, sure that Eric is a defensive tackle. And I'm like, and I look down at the sheet. It's like, I had to nudge my editor. Hey, Ship, why is he listed at defensive end? Go ahead, just write him in as a tackle. It's fine. Little do we find out later that at 53-man cuts, they got rid of guys that shouldn't be gotten rid of for things to make sense, and come to find out he has every intention of moving Eric Armstead around like that. Another guy who could do that too, by the way, Casey, Trayvon Walker can kick inside too. There's a lot of versatility rotation that the Jags can do defensively, and Ryan Nielsen is king rotation if you saw anything he did in Atlanta. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm seriously so intrigued by this. Here, I know we've probably asked this question to you the last time we talked to you, and maybe it's not appropriate to ask right now, but I don't.
James Johnson's still amazing. Oh, sorry, wrong guy.
I will point out, I don't know how this is working, but Casey's live on another podcast right now, and it's trippy as shit. Trippy as shit.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Where do you sit on Doug Peterson? I don't know where I sit on him overall, and I go back and forth. So I really wanted to ask somebody, closer to the situation.
I struggle with I struggle to understand some of the criticism of Doug Peterson, if I'm being honest. People were like, oh, well, the Eagles started to sag, so they fired him. Yeah, okay. You know what? That happened to Andy Reid too. What the hell are we talking about, right? I think I think where that noise kind of starts to come from is the obsession that seems to exist over who's calling the plays, whether it's him or Press Taylor. At one time or another, whether it's him or Doug, maybe I'm just not a talented enough scout. I'm willing to admit that. I am not a strong scout as it stands. I just know what I see and all this other stuff. But for me, when one is calling plays versus the other, the difference isn't very big to anything I could pick up. Now, if the concern is, the ability to make adjustments, perhaps, that's part of the reason for the defensive coaching change, right? He cited it last year that there were too many times where adjustment was needed, but nothing was really found as to what the adjustment was that the opponent made until after the game when the L's already in the book.
Yeah.
Right. What I can say is, if the Jags don't have a third straight winning season, not something the Jags have racked up a lot lately, by the way. I feel like there's some reason maybe to be concerned, but I think a little perspective is required. Is if the Jags were to somehow make one more leap up, we're talking Super Bowl contention. I'm not saying Kansas City Chiefs good, but maybe like a Baltimore Ravens B. That high up. I hate to evoke the name on a Browns show. I apologize, but I think the Jags have the opportunity to do that. And I'm even playing with the theory of maybe BTJ was a great pick, but was he the right pick? Should they have gone with the Fuaga or something like that to bolster the inside? In their opinion, they did address it by getting Mitch Morris. But again, the deeper question, you asked about Doug Peterson. Me, and pardon my bias as a Niners fan who's been hurt before by Trent Baalke, the argument I would make, and Travis Holmes has made himself on the Duval dive, is that Baalke's draft performance in leading into 23, when, the mantra was, it was always the Jags were supposed to win 13 games. They held pat in a lot of places, especially the offensive line with Luke Fortner, who now suddenly is public enemy number one in Houston County, right? And a lot of that offensive line action, they got Anton Harrison. They needed more and didn't address it, right? And that's I'm putting more of that on Baalke, not addressing that and making the right moves. Brenton Strange was not a pick that should have been made. Tank Bigsby, although I like the kid and he's looking good now, I wanted a corner at that pick. And now you see the depth issues that popped up. I'm looking entirely too smart on the cornerback position, which is literally the polar opposite of me living as a fat guy in the trenches, okay? If I'm smarter than you, Trent Baalke, in that place, you did something wrong, kid. So I think that's where a lot of the criticism comes from. But in situations like this where you don't meet expectation, who's the guy that gets clobbered first? It's the quarterback. Well, when you have 3 injuries in a year, that tends to get relieved some, and then it falls to the coach, right? I think there's a lot of that Doug Peterson's drawing from. And Travis could probably tell you a lot more negatives he has for Doug, but I'm not in that space yet. I think the team would have to have an absolute catastrophe happen. I'm talking like 5 or 6 wins or something, before we really should be sniffing the hot seat. And listen, let's be honest. It's not like this franchise is famous for firing coaches. I mean, okay, Urban Meyer doesn't count, but
That feels like a fever dream, honestly, that Urban Meyer was there. It's such a strange time. And
he like arrived in the night and left in the night. Like it was this like I still think about when all that information came out after that Thursday night game where he'd like sent everybody home and he was out there partying with a young woman. And it was like, as an Ohio State guy, it doesn't seem real at all. Like it feels like that just kind of happened. Casey, you're just flaunting that flavor in front of me, aren't you?
Oh, I am. Dude. If you guys want to hit me up for a sponsorship, man, I am all
I
ears.
have only been able to find one of those all week.
Yeah.
So,
so again, better health. They need the help there. Come on.
I'm saying.
Open for business.
Have we reached prediction time?
Well, that's the thing. As I read Kyle's keys to the game on fanfirstsports.com, he can bang it. But you guys haven't. So if you'd be so bold, kind of tell us how you think this game plays out and a prediction if you feel necessary.
Yeah, listen, I kind of voiced some of it earlier, but I mean, this is a matchup problem for the Jags. Again, you mentioned your defensive tackles having their injury issues, but I really like them. If they find themselves in a position to be on a one-on-one with Ezra Cleveland or especially Brandon Schiff, who had not the best game last week and just gave up a pivotal 3rd and 1 thinking he could stand tall and block Calais Campbell. Yeah, that hurt my feelings a little bit, Casey. You feel it in there.
Yeah.
Anyways, no, but I think taking advantage of that weakness on the offense, I set over-unders for the Browns earlier, over-under 2.5 for Trevor. If the Jags have more than 2, which they did last time up there, in Cleveland. They had 4, correct. 3 interceptions by Trevor alone. Parker Washington with a lost fumble, right? So I think that is pivotal as to win. If that happens, this game is at the very least competitive. And if Trevor doesn't, he's going to throw the ball more. And I know a lot of people were complaining that Trevor didn't throw the ball enough last game. That was actually the game plan, and I think it's a good idea to keep $387 million in Dolphins assets off the field as long as you can. That works for me. And this was pre-concussion number, 4, 3 for 2? I don't know, whatever. So this
it's 3 in 2 years. I know that much.
Yeah, so it's crazy. But all that being said, that was a good game plan. There were just a couple bad play calls, I think, on that drive, perhaps. But the Browns being strong in a particular place where the Jags were weak was certainly one. Trevor throwing the ball more and looking for checkdowns. Listen, another UCF guy who's going to be a key here, just like he was against the Dolphins, is Gabe Davis. I don't know. Let's put it this way. You do have good DBs, but they got a lot of places to throw that damn football, and Gabe is a tough guy to stop even if you're there. I think the ratio has gone down. I haven't done the math yet. It's not 1 in 6 and 1 in 11 targets for a touchdown. I think it might be 1 in 8 and 1 in 14. Still, the dude is money when you throw him the ball. I just don't think he's being used for that long option like he was in Buffalo. And then finally, I mentioned it earlier too. This offensive line for Cleveland's beaten up, and I see 3 guys in particular pinning their ears back. And they got 3 sacks against the Dolphins last week and drew a number of holding calls that helped end drives. I think it was 3 by Mason Smith, by the way, who's a rookie defensive tackle that they picked up, right? So I think the offensive line for Cleveland is going to have a rough matchup. They need to hold and, again, prevent those turnovers. Watson hasn't been great at protecting the football. Hell, the one time I saw him in person was a Jaguars preseason game a couple of years back. He had a turnover in that beast. So you know, turnovers are always a key, but if this game is lacking scoring as I think it will, it is as sloppy as I predict it to be, that's going to be magnified here. That was my final key.
Yeah, it's interesting enough. Yeah, the offensive line struggles, but last week the quarterback was charged with 22 pressures and 5 sacks. So that was during a game in which Dallas finished with 40. Yeah, there was
40 of them.
40.
That's a number.
And it's just it's insane that more than 50% of them were on the quarterback. And it's like, bruh.
Well, let me piggyback off something Kyle just said, too, because he said they had 3 sacks on the Dolphins. And that, for people listening, that might sound like a lot of sacks. If you watch the Dolphins play that quick game, that ball's out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horizontal, too. It's not even a step. I mean, he's just just dishing it off. So the fact you're able to get that kind of pressure on that kind of quick game, which Cleveland does not have. I think Tua got rid of the ball in 2.5 seconds. Watson's holding for 3.2. That second and a half is all the difference in the world when you have a Trevon Walker, Eric Armstead, and a Josh Hines Allen coming at your face.
Casey, for context, that 2.5 seconds, that's Brady and Manning stuff right there. Like that's elite level stuff.
Yeah. I find myself struggling. I'm in a show me mode as far as the Browns go. And I know the Browns were able to beat Jacksonville the last time they were down there, but they've struggled there throughout the series. And I'm in a show me mode right now. So as much as I would like to pick the Browns on Sunday, I'm not there yet. I need to see it. And it was, Kyle, that was as bad of a debut for a season as I can remember.
Yeah.
Anything that could have been gone wrong did. I don't really know how else to say that.
I mean, here's my student of the game better help moment for the Barking Browns. At least you weren't the Panthers. How about that?
Yeah.
I would even throw the Bengals in that. I think the Bengals getting shellacked by the Patriots at home has got to be up there too. But when it happens to you, it feels like it's worse than it hangs on the outside.
No doubt.
So I've gone back and forth all week what I think ends up happening. I just can't believe they would fall to 0-2, so that's where I'm at. And I think they can play just better, a little bit better defense. So like if I'm putting a score on it, I'll take Cleveland, but I'm gonna do 17-16.
Okay.
That's my entire thing is this defense has to hold the Jaguars to 18 or lower.
Yeah.
If it's above 8, it's a lost cause. Like this offense hasn't shown me enough to believe that they could go on the road and put up 20 points. So it's got to. So Jim Schwartz, you're our only hope. This has to be ugly. You got to make it ugly. Make it a field goal battle. Try to play a field position game. So if they can hold Jacksonville to 17 points, they have a shot. I don't feel great about it. And if I had to pick right now, probably leaning Jag 17-14.
No, those are awesome scores too. 17-16, 17-14 are both good. By the way, Casey, if you're going to go with the "You're My Only Hope" reference, you need to be going "May the Schwartz be with you." I mean, it's right there on the table, buddy. All right.
You really dropped the ball there, buddy.
Where do I send my 5%? I'm going to have you be my life coach. That's what we're going to do here. We're going to set it up. I'll get you on my PayPal.
Fair enough. Hey, I just if we're gonna go that route, I'll be happy with the percentage of the new Better Help deal you land. But with all that in mind, here's where I am. You guys have awesome scores. I think you have to account also for rookie kicker Cam Little. It's a kicker. Who cares? Well, cool. 53-yarder as your first kick down there in South Beach in that heat. Bam, there you go. I think the heat also is worth mention. Not that it doesn't get a little warm up there in the OH, but listen. It ain't this muggy crap we got here, boys. All right. So that being said, I too have a sloppy game. I mentioned that. Jags take it away 21-13. Maybe it's an odd score, like maybe like a 22 or 23 based on field goals that get in there too. But that's the number. At some point, my gut is telling me that is 21-13 that we come away with there with the Jags going 1-1. And I'll tell you, if they don't win this game, with all the injuries they have, 0-4 is a very real possibility with what's coming up on the schedule later, too.
Well, Kyle, we so appreciate you being here. This is twice now. It's amazing to build a bridge to somebody else. And so thank you for joining us today. Let the people know what you do, where to find you, the whole thing.
Hey, fellas, listen, it's an honor, joy, and privilege to talk with dudes that like ball, regardless of the teams and the fanhoods and all that. And listen, there will be more to come. At the end of the day, I do have the Student of the Game podcast, bing, where I get to talk other things NFL. So who knows? If the Browns surprise some people, I might have one of you gentlemen come on, like I had Casey come on to do the AFC North preview representing your Cleveland Browns. It's all good. Of course, there's other things I do. You can find me at the Student of the Game on Facebook, at the SOTG on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. My work covering the UCF Knights football and basketball when it does start here in November for the Black and Gold Banneret. Bing! Make sure Saturday night they're already in Fort Worth to battle TCU. Make sure you get the instant reaction on the Night Shift podcast, powered by the Black and Gold Banneret on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. Bing! And then, of course, that same thing on Sunday, the Duval Dive live after this game is over. Check that out if you aren't already talking with these fine gentlemen of the Barking Browns. You can also find that, hey, on the podcast form, too, if you listen to these guys first. That's fine. I'm mad at you. We all got to talking ball. It's fine. But that'll be there as well with me and my friend Travis D. Holmes. Also, hey, listen, we're talking about podcasts proper Tuesday during the week. The Black and Gold Banner, it has their weekly edition. And then I mentioned the Student of the Game earlier, 9 o'clock Wednesday. The Duval Dive Weekly Show is on Wednesday as well at 7:30 p.m. And hey, if you're bored, find me hanging out with the crew at the Huddle Up podcast doing that. And then, of course, Casey mentions my writing, and thank you for flattering me by reading them at the Fans First Sports Network. A good time all the way around, gentlemen. Until next time, class dismissed.
You are a busy guy, Kyle. Thank you very much. This has been a Jacksonville Jaguars, Cleveland Browns preview of the Barking Brown Show. Nick, he's Kyle. That's Jacob. He's Casey. Go Browns.